Welcome to the Bedminster Township Committee regular meeting for March 19th, 2018. My apologies for being just a few minutes late. We have our full committee with us tonight. Can I get the Open Public Meetings Act statement?
Yes, sir. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was sent to the Courier News in Somerville and to the Burnsville News in Whippany, to all subscribers, and also posted here at the Municipal Building as of January 8th, 2018.
I'll ask you all to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have 6 sets of meeting minutes to review. Budget work session number 3 from February the 12th, as well as an executive session from the 12th. Budget work session number 4 from February 26th and its corresponding exec session. And a regular agenda meeting for the 5th of March and an executive session that followed. Any comments or questions on those meeting minutes? If not, I'll take a motion.
Move to approve the meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Permits and raffles, an on-premise 50-50 raffle for JDRF New Jersey, Metro and Rockland County chapter be held on June 11th, 2018, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., Fiddler's Elbow Country Club, 811 Rattlesnake Bridge Road. Any comments or questions? If not, I'll take a motion.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Public comments. Twice every meeting, we invite people to that microphone to make public comments on anything that's on, or well, I guess anything that's not on the agenda. If it is about an ordinance, which we'll have a public hearing on, we'll have comments then. But otherwise, we do this at the beginning and the end of the meeting.
Well, good evening, Rob Wall, New Jersey Central Power and Light, 52 Chatham Road, City of Summit. And as you may have recalled, we had a bit of a weather event for the last couple weeks. We have one coming up this Wednesday. Hopefully it will not be as bad, but so we're on the alert for it. Just wanted to share some statistics about the storm that we experienced both on Friday, March 2nd and Wednesday, May 7th. We had about 537,000 customers without power for both events together. 1,719 roads were closed as a result of the event. 750 poles were broken, 51 miles of wire replaced, 5,400 trees fell or equipment during that storm. So we had 6,100 employees responding, which is 4 times our normal complement of 1,500 that work at JCP&L. We had everybody back. The first storm almost within 5 days. We were in the home stretch, getting everyone restored. When the second storm hit us, we had to pull the guys off the bucket trucks, had some guys get stuck in the snow. When the second snow came in, and then again, that storm lasted another 5 days in addition to the first one. So, quite an ordeal, and thank you everyone for their patience. And really willing to take any questions or comments about our storm response.
Go ahead.
So when you were here last, I had given you some negative feedback about the subcontractors and the line work that was being done with the trees. So now I'm going to eat a little bit of crow, because I'm going to tell you that when I first moved in here, there's no doubt in my mind that my power would have been out during that storm. It did not go out, and thank you for that, and I think the work that was done was helpful for that. I got on the calls. I think we were all on those daily calls and the updates. My only comment, and it's not really an issue for you per se, it would be that, I think in a situation like that, the residents are expecting that, power is going to be out and it's going to take some time to get up and running. But I think part of the angst that was being expressed by some of the folks in our position on behalf of their constituents is that they were getting calls about ETAs for time, power to be brought back on, and then they weren't being met. And I think that's really frustrating, because you can hang on and you say, all right, I can make it till midnight tomorrow. That's, it's okay, I can do it. And then midnight tomorrow comes and it doesn't come on. It's a huge letdown, and it's like work, right? You set expectations at a certain level so you can exceed them and look like the hero. And that would just be my one comment, is let's just be a little bit more realistic about ETAs and getting power back on. Having said that, you got double whammied on a storm. Thank you to all of your line workers that were out there busting their humps in bad weather and, really working My street in particular, I feel guilty. I had power, my next door neighbor did not. And they were out for quite a while, but, you know, you had folks come through, and, I know you guys are out there working hard, so thanks for what you've done, and the line work that did get done. I will tell you that it was noticed by at least half of our street that we had power when we otherwise probably would not have, so thank you.
Thank you for the feedback, and the ETRs on the website and the automatic calls in the early days of the storm was a real challenge for us that we need to better address. That the outage map, the ETR system we have works really well during regular outages even on a busy weekend, but clearly when we have a storm of this size, it not be the challenge.
And just let me say thank you to you, because you made yourself available to us, and you were responsive, and I appreciate that. So when we could go back to the folks that were asking us questions, you kept us informed, we were able to keep them informed, so thank you to you too.
That's why
Colin?
I was just going to say thank you again, because you know what? No one could ever accuse you of dodging. You're always here, you're always giving us updates, and it's appreciated. And I was going to ask you, what do you think, in addition to the status updating, other things that you may be looking to do better in terms of JCP&L, based on your root cause analysis that I'm sure you guys are doing right now? And what do we need to do better? What would be recommendations you give to the township in terms of things we should be keeping an eye on, or things we should be, from a maintenance perspective, things we should be doing?
Interesting question. I know our operations side are looking at this storm. They've not done a complete thorough examination of what went right and what went wrong. Through the ETRs on the website was one area where we experienced a significant challenge, and getting better at that system under storm conditions would be one priority for us. It does help manage those expectations and keep folks off of your back when they see those things, those problems happening. Predicting the storm size and scope and strength is always going to be the challenges. Even as much as we improve with weather forecasting, we have meteorologists on staff at First Energy to look at the weather solely through the lens of outages for all 10 operating companies that First Energy owns. And getting those forecasts right continues to be something we focus on and work on. We've had storms where we've had a small RV ready to go and then nothing happened. This was not quite the opposite, but we spoke was more than what we expected. So that's another area we need to improve. As far as what the township can do better, very little. Governing body across the board was responsible in their communication. Staff was professional in their communication with us. Some towns we get overwhelmed with communication from multiple sources. That is not the case here in Bedminster. Sometimes we do the elected officials who scream the sky is falling, and it's not. So I can't think of much that the township could have done better in this circumstance than what I experienced.
Is there anything in terms of, to the casual observer, sometimes I see the tree limbs growing through the wires, and I'm thinking, oh, that can't be good. And other neighbors have mentioned that to me as well. In terms of routine maintenance, how do we attack that so that that doesn't happen? Because obviously, tree limbs and wires don't mix in a bad storm.
No, and that's one thing that policymakers are going to have to look at is that 15-foot standard sufficient given the frequency of storms that we're experiencing these days? And that's something that may have to change. But reporting to us limbs that you think are a hazard or potential hazard to the lines is always very important, either through me or to the 800 number. We will get somebody to come out and look at it. We do a 4-year cycle where we trim everything back 15 foot from the wires. That may have to be accelerated from 4 to 3 or to 2. We're going to change that standard from 15 to 20. One thing that came out of Sandy was the 15-foot clearance was changed from not just a radius around the wire, but ground to sky within the first several miles of the substation, what we call the lockout area. So the BPU and the lake municipalities met, and they said we should have 15 feet around the sky, like a transmission corridor, not just radius, for the entire circuit. And there's some pushback on that from municipalities concerned about damage to the trees. And the compromise was to make that 15-foot around the sky from the substation to the first protective device, what we call the lockout, so the first breaker. And we have to be expanded beyond that to the entire circuit, so that way there's no limb 20 foot above the wires that would fall onto it. Those are the kind of things that I think will be looked at in days and weeks to come, and probably see some changes.
Thank you.
Larry?
Well, Rob, I just want to thank you again because you responded not just to the emails, but to personal phone calls in addition to the teleconferences. So that was very helpful and allowed us to report back to our constituents about the activity, just as Doug had mentioned, the expectations of restoration, and also for educational purposes, the distinction between repair and restoration was also something that we, I think, all learned by participating on those phone calls, but perhaps if you could also just give us a rundown of the distinction.
Sure. So one of the things that was changed post-Sandy was the first work immediately following the storm. Obviously on the Friday the 2nd and Wednesday the 7th, with the winds accelerating 40 miles per hour or more, there were winds clocked in Burnersville and Berners Township to 80 miles per hour. We can't go up in the sky and do any kind of work in those conditions. Under those conditions, it's strictly life-and-limb emergencies will go out and do the work. Following the storm, the day after, or the morning after, or a few hours after the winds let off, our first job is road openings and making scenes safe. So getting down wires out of the way, road openings, getting those trees cleared. That can sometimes take a full day in and of itself, which is terribly frustrating if you're a customer or if you're an elected official looking at those action numbers because they don't move for 24 hours. And that is in large part because we're not putting customers in lights, we're opening roads and getting things safe so the traffic can get from place to place. Firefighters, EMTs can respond where they need to go. That we think was a wise decision. The feedback I've gotten so far from elected officials in towns is that was a wise decision because we need to get those roads open and get the traveling public able to move. But again, for the public's expectation standpoint, you need to think that for the first 24 hours, you may not see anybody get restored unless they're part of a substation damage that we're able to repair. So that's one thing that I think would help people understand our process. And of course, moving forward, it's critical facilities and the water status installs.
One of the issues, and maybe this also follows up on your comment, when you see the tree limbs, not just over the top branch, but between JCP&L's line and the Verizon line and any other lines that are out there. And to some extent, moving forward on policy basis, there was discussion about the 15-foot, the 20 to 25, or the fall zone, right? So I think with this heavy storm, what we really saw, my layman observations were that a lot of this was fall zone with these, especially the evergreens, getting way down and in that wind. So whether it was 15 feet or more, that those trees were a big problem. And a policy basis moving forward may not be just 15 feet, because 15 feet may just be an arbitrary number, but really tying it into those trees or limbs that could take down a line. It's also interesting that some of the feedback had complained about the aged infrastructure, and must be the poles. But looking at some of the articles out there, it wasn't the poles. I mean, some poles did snap, but by and large, this was trees taking wires down, not poles. So it brings the emphasis right back to trees, and it's talking to actually Steve about this. Is there anything that we can do? Can we make our tree clearing ordinance easier? But of course, we don't necessarily want to encourage folks to mess around with trees that are near lines. So it really comes back to JCP&L's ability to take those trees down and take them down quickly. Maybe 4 years is not the right thing. So is there something, how in-depth is this policy issue going down? And is this with BPU? Is this the league? Is this down to Trenton?
BPU sets regulations regarding tree trimming standards for all utilities, not just JCP&L, but obviously Orange and Rockland, PCG, and SULA. And they would have to change the standard. The league municipalities did, because they had a committee that met with BPU on the new standard. Those Sandy's would be able to contact the league and see if there's a way to re-up that committee and join and ask to participate in it. There are 5 public hearings scheduled, and certainly if the Township Committee wanted to submit a letter or a resolution discussing tree trimming or some sort of comments, that would be an opportunity to do that. Provide comments about or you're not necessarily appear in person, but I'm sure they're taking comments as well. So there's another opportunity to submit information that you're going to know.
And is there coordination between JCP&L, Verizon, or any other users of the poles?
Yes, there is cooperation and coordination. We have a whole department called Joint Use that exclusively looks at the joint use of these poles between us and Verizon. Verizon owns, depending where you about half the poles, and we own the other half. And they, of course, put a lot of wires on our poles, and we own theirs. One thing that they don't do is tree trimming. The tree trimming standard is really for electric lines. But certainly, that should be okay as well.
Right, I do remember last year, or it was 2 years ago, they were doing the trimming by our house, and the JCP&L hired crew took down to the JCP&L line. We don't go below that. So just, maybe that's something that you guys could raise.
Heck, I mean, on that point,
Here and getting to know us so that when we do need to reach out, we don't feel funny about, you don't know me, but, you know, we know you and you come here and you're dedicated to us, so we really appreciate it. The helicopter emails were great too, so we know what's going on in the sky above the snow. So we really appreciate it. And I think that the call process was great to hear what other challenges other communities were having, so you can talk to your constituents and say, yeah, it's happening there too. It's not just here, and relax, and it's going to get fixed eventually. So we have more snow coming, and hopefully we don't have to reach out, but we know you're there if we do, so we really appreciate it.
There's one other question. In some of the early indicators coming out of JCP&L, there was a number, Judy, was it like 583 or something of that magnitude?
Oh, you mean in Bedminster?
In Bedminster.
Yeah.
And
It was a
we were trying to
crazy
track
number,
down
yeah.
where these,
It was like 394 or something.
it started high, then it came down, then it came down, then it came back up again, I guess with the second storm. And how accurate are those numbers? I mean, when you had that conversation, I think you had mentioned that sometimes it's based upon what a loop, how many homes are in a loop. So if you get 2 calls on one loop, you may just identify the entire loop as down.
Correct. They're not dead on accurate, not 100%, but they're fairly good. And what can happen during a storm is we will take a circuit out of power to make it safe, so then that number might jump up while they're doing that repair, then once the repair is done, it'll drop back down. So you can see some of those fluctuations. When we take a snapshot, say at 2 in the afternoon, and send you an email, that could be what we're capturing in that snapshot. Other thing that can happen during a storm is you'll have an outage inside of an outage. So if we have a 500 customer outage that's affecting part of Bedminster Township, and we fix the device that we think has failed with a down wire, and we think we bring all 500 customers back, we'll do a callback and say we've fixed the problem until you have power, and we'll find out that 50 folks don't have power because there's another outage somewhere else in that side of that outage, and they'll come back up as being out of power. So that's kind of the give and take of a storm. Even a normal outage can have that occur, but certainly in a storm you're going to have a lot of that.
I've got several things, some lessons learned from it. I want to again first echo what the other members of the committee said. We appreciate your availability and you being as forthright with us as you could be, given the circumstances. We also appreciate that you brought on some extra help, because you had somebody covering the hours that you had to get some sleep in the 9 days or more. But we learned some things, and we learned some things through the conference calls. For the record, and I told Jake this last week, all 5 members of this township committee and members of the staff here were on this. But it was also not uncoordinated. It wasn't that Rob was getting 5 calls asking the exact same question. There were multiple people on conference calls on a daily basis. Even if we didn't ask a question, we learned something out of it. So I got a couple emails, "Oh, Mayor, thank you for what you did." I didn't do it, or I might have done a little bit of it, but there were people on this dais and in here that had something to do with it. Of course, ultimately, your people actually did it, but being that voice and being that squeaky wheel, because I know on Ski Hill, by the second storm, they were told they were back on. And then I had to call and said, well, oh no, they're powered up again, or they're down on the list because they were only affected by the same storm, and we had to re-coordinate to basically get them put back in the queue, first out, first fixed. So we eventually got that fixed. But your folks were good about that. We didn't get blown off. We got people actually working with us on that. We learned some things from the conference calls. And I'll say this half just for the record here, if anybody watches us on YouTube later. You can get partial power. In fact, I have people very close to me that got the raw voltage back. And if you notice during one of these storms, your light's coming on and off, that could be as dangerous or more dangerous than losing power. Folks close to me had to buy a new refrigerator because when they came back home, the motor was burned out because they were getting the wrong voltage. And as that was explained to us on a conference call, I mean, it's sure it's on your bill, it might be in the fine print, might be places where people don't really read what they should be reading, but it could cause a fire. You leave your house, like, I know people that got out, because hey, it's gonna be 6 days, get a hotel, I'm gonna bunk in with relatives, I'm gonna take a vacation. You could come out, and if you've got fluctuating power, it could be a problem. So I think that was a huge lesson I learned out of some of this. We also learned some issues with the reporting, and I don't know, hopefully, maybe it was a user problem, but I know early on we were trying to figure out outages. I went on to the Report My Outage website. I can report my outage. I can't report his outage. He doesn't have a phone, he doesn't have power. Hey, can you report me out? Oh, I don't see anybody on his street. I'm using it as a... So, and in fact, I had people that said, well, I don't have power, I don't have phone. I tried to call it in on my cell, and JCP&L said, we recognize your phone, thanks for calling. And it never got reported. So those, I think, are some lessons learned as we try to figure out, as Larry was saying, who's got power, who doesn't, who gets in. So those were some things that I think we learned a lot since Sandy about how your website works, and it's a pretty robust website. It does a lot of things. There's a lot of good information on there. But like I said, we did learn some lessons. Trees, I'm going to say a little bit more, but I think one of the things, Colin, that we've got to do as a township, and we've got to communicate to our constituents, people remembered it well during Sandy, and we've had about 5 or 6 years since. All love our trees, but sometimes power, and we have to live with some tree trimming. And we've mind people that are going to get a little upset and a little heated about their lovely sycamore in their front yard. Tree grow back. We have folks in this town that have some elderly folks and some folks that have special medical needs. They don't have power. They've got issues. They've got oxygen, they've got various medical devices. Some of them have generators. But hey, there are life-saving issues. I know during Sandy, we had problems with pharmacies, keeping pharmacies open. So thank God we didn't have that this time, but I appreciate what Group of 5 did, plus the staff. I appreciate the openness and access, and I know you guys were doing the best you could. It was a rough situation, but I certainly hope we don't get it day after tomorrow, and I hope we all learn something and take something out of this. So, Rob, thanks for coming tonight.
Of course. Glad to. Wait for better circumstances, again, with the weather.
All right, Rob.
Thank you,
Thank
Rob.
you.
Thanks, Rob.
Rest.
Thank your sleep, because you may need it.
We'll call you soon. Hopefully not.
Anybody else who wishes to be heard? Public comments? All right. We will have another public comment
Well,
at the end.
while we're on the subject,
Yeah.
if we can just talk about Mayor, as you said, lessons learned. So one of the discussions that, I think Judy and I were having about the aftermath of the storm was, did we know precisely what neighborhoods or what houses had issues? Just really from a context of, if you knew that 3 houses were down, maybe we'll send police there to patrol that neighborhood a little more frequently than we might otherwise. Because folks may leave their house unattended if they're without power. And I'm sort of curious as what we have as a program to identify and patrol, if there is one.
Routinely, we have, if you're leaving your property and you want to submit to us a property check request and with the contact information, we'll accept that. But I think from a law enforcement standpoint, it's hard for us to know, if you're without power or maybe you're not home. There were some feeds that it was just one house affected because of the long runs up the driveway. So I don't know, it's something to think about, but I don't know how you do that without, bringing in 3 or 4 more officers.
No, I'm not saying to bring in 3 or 4 more officers, but to see whether or not you could then say, look, we know, for example, Ski Hill, where half the Ski Hill is down, maybe the patrols go there a little more frequently during that outage. And that's why it was actually looking at the city as to where they were.
It's hard to know, it's really about where those outages are.
Because if a line is down in the street, it could be one way, it could be the other way, but you don't know how many homes are affected with that outage. at
Well,
one time.
and that's, it's an interesting thing. So I said, Old Stonehouse was
Correct.
listed as having, I think, 35 units down. So I
there was
called
only-
folks on Old Stonehouse, I said, how are you guys doing? Yeah, we have power. And then they called me back later, say, no, at the very end of the street, there were
That's
2 or
right.
3
Two
houses that
houses.
were without. So one is, once again, it's not exact information. But at the same time, if we knew that Old Stonehouse was one of those affected areas, once again, just to patrol that area a little more frequently.
Let me just, if I may, pick up on that notion of what if. And I think that we were pretty lucky this time. I think we had numbers that were certainly down. My street was affected, but I think overall the township made it through okay. But can someone describe what protocols we have in place for if we had a much bigger outage and
Well,
have
we
it
can
set up for
we can go back to
stations and
what we did during Sandy, which we would have stand up OEM. And that we did during Sandy. I don't think we stood up in the same manner that we did during Superstorm Sandy.
The county had people in place. They were coordinating with our OEM people, but we never really enacted our
EOC.
EOC here.
We had the library volunteered as a warming station. I think it was only at the very end that I saw RVCC stood up,
CC was brought on.
but that was at the very
That's
end.
into it, yeah.
Correct.
But how do we get
should we
the
have, right, how do you get the word spread, and should we have something in play, like if someone's without power for more than a certain period of time, that there is a warming station or a charging station, or, a lot of people are living off the cell phones, obviously, and, without power, you're not charging it.
People were coming to town hall and calling us, asking those types of questions, like, I'm on a well, how do I get water? And we had that information. People were coming to town hall just to power up their phones, or a lot of them did go to the library so they could get on a computer. So we did have that to some level.
Okay, good.
And we have Nixley. People have to participate in Nixley. We've always kind of pushed, sign up for Nixley, and that is a way we can get it back out in reverse. I remember during Sandy, the prolonged outages that we had township-wide during Sandy, and while Nixley wasn't working because people's cell phone batteries were dying, Go out and they'd run their car for a half hour to get their cell phone up, but we had issues in some cases with some cell coverage. I mean, I remember going back to, posting flyers up in the hills so people could get the word out, hey, here's where you go. So there's varying levels that probably is better taken care of when we do stand up the LPC.
Okay.
And that was not deemed that we had enough outage during this period. And I believe we were in contact with the majority of the folks that had the power outages, and most of the power, except for Ski Hill, was in the western part of the town. A good portion of those folks had backup generator power, so we didn't get a lot of.
But what generates that EOC operations center to be open? Somebody has to make that decision, and unfortunately, that either comes too late in a situation, or it doesn't come at all. And we should have thought about that. And I think some of that is part of the planning process when these storms are due. We should probably meet once, for 15, 20 minutes, figure that out, if we should open it up or not, so that if we do have a situation like that it is, because we have had situations where we probably should have opened up. We should have probably had people staffing something so that we could then gather our information and then generate that information for the county.
We did have conversations, I would say, between the three of us on those levels. Is the library available to open? They could open, but then they needed staff to be there to man it.
Right.
Maybe that wasn't possible. We have opened our firehouse. I know Pottersville Firehouse was open,
Yep.
assisting Cornell at some level. We could have opened the courtroom like we did during Sandy. I know Pluckman Presbyterian Church offered to open. So, we had some possible things to do, but it never really got to that level.
All right.
Right, yeah, I want to say, dodge the bullet, sounds, too over the top, but, next time we should, be don't want to say better prepared, but have a plan in place of where we go, so that anybody asks us on the way, yes, this is the plan, this is where you're supposed to go, and this is what's open. Just, I don't know, I just feel like it was on top of me before I realized it, and realized, oh man, you know, some of my folks on my street probably need to charge their cell phones.
Yeah.
I mean, they can come to my house, they could do it, but, you know, I'm talking about an event that we had more out than we did,
Right.
where everybody's struggling with it.
Right, and
Lesson learned, as
you know,
Mayor said.
so I think what we're talking about is something short of handy, but having the protocol in place, and perhaps, you know, not that folks are going to say, hey, what's my storm preparedness on the Bedminster website when it's beautiful out there, but perhaps if, once again, you know, we've got this robust website, you know, maybe populate it with some information about storm preparedness,
Well-
warming station, charging stations.
But also, to be fair, the new robust website had the outages on it.
Oh, absolutely.
We had a lot of information going
No,
on.
no, there,
I have to say,
I don't think, yeah.
the user-friendly new website that we have,
Yeah.
I was home on my laptop, I got an email from Raul, and I quickly...
Yeah, a lot of stuff went through that.
It's a
Yeah.
user-friendly site, and
Yeah.
that was easy to do, and a lot of people got that information.
and it was really great because you actually had hourly updates that Judy was posting
Yeah, it was
as
amazing.
information was coming out of JCP&L. So the website is a great opportunity. But, you know, just as Doug is saying, perhaps,
You
you
don't
know,
have
we
electricity.
Right. Well, you get it for, you know, maybe 3 hours. And then you run to Doug's house.
Yeah, kudos, Judy. You had the website updated, you had the Facebook page updated. I mean, you know, I was
Oh,
getting,
yeah, I was...
you were all over the place,
Yeah.
every piece of social media. That was terrific. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to monthly subcommittee reports. Mr. Stevenson?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Colin and I met with John on DPW, and we do have an issue to raise with you tonight, and want to get your opinion on it, and that is, we have the standard route for picking up brush, and it's to occur last week in April. I want to say April 20th was the target date this year. Now, with this event, the question becomes, do we do a town-wide sweep and clean up of brush for all of our residents? And I think, sort of, Colin, where we're coming down on it is that we sort of favor that, but what it would do is, it would mean some of the field work for lining the fields and, you know, that sort of thing would be pushed off for a week or two. My take again on that is, given that this sort of came out of the blue and it affected everybody across the board, that we should probably put some effort into getting everything cleaned up, and the folks that are using the fields probably don't really require lining. They're not playing games, I wouldn't think, this early in the season, that they can be put off for a couple weeks. But that we should do a run through town and get this debris picked up and get everything cleared. But before we actually gave John the okay with that, and Colin and I wanted to bring it to the 5 of us to make sure that you guys were in lockstep, or if you had a different thought. So that's number one, and then we had a second issue, which I'll address later, but I figured maybe we'll just hit the first one now.
And the reality of it is, we have our neighbors already putting out stuff, debris from the storm in the street. In some cases, it creates a traffic hazard because it's literally sticking out in the street. So we're going to have to deal with it one way or the other.
How do we get the word out? Is this an either or? In other words, if the expectation is the last week of April is brush pickup in Bedminster, is this an additional, or is this instead of? And if it's instead of, how do we get the word out, hey, psst, don't expect this coming back in at the end of April?
Yeah, I asked that exact thing, that maybe we do the streets that aren't on the list first, and then loop back around and get everybody who is on the list, because they're going to be putting stuff out there anyway. But John seems to think it's going to require 2 passes anyway. At least 2 passes.
We've been getting a lot of phone calls just on exactly this topic, and I've been telling people, John was working through his usual pickup area through last week, and I said, we're going to meet on this tonight and look at the website tomorrow, or give a call tomorrow, and we'll give you an update of what neighborhoods we're doing or not doing, and for how long.
So currently, the last week, we've been just going around the streets and picking up off the right-of-way areas. All the stuff and debris was in the right-of-way areas, just try to get everything cleaned up and stuff. And that's taken third of the town a week. So if you think
Yeah.
and look at it, it's quite extensive. On Doug Street, Ski Hill, we did go up there and pick up, because there was debris in the roadway, we did pick up the brush that was put out from residents who already cut things up. And I went up there today just to see what was up there. And again, there's the same amount that was up there today
Yeah.
that was the other day. And I can still see in the properties that there are still trees to come out.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a long, drawn-out process, and that's fine. Just so everybody's aware that it is going to take a bit of time to do that. And my concern was that our athletic fields open up first, unfortunately. Timing is not the greatest at this point in time. Snow tomorrow or Wednesday, and so we're going to be set back. In between all that, we ended up fixing dirt roads for the last 2 or 3 days last week because they were shot.
Yeah.
So we're doing what we can. I know the hike and bike trail took us 2.5 days to clear the hike and bike trail of all the debris that was in there, and that was just to cut it out of the pathway. We're still going to go back and clean all that stuff up. So this is going to be somewhat of a long, drawn-out process, just as Sandy was. Not to the extent that Sandy was, but there.
John, we still have the dump open
Correct.
on those Thursdays and those Saturdays.
People can bring brush down anytime.
Okay. I don't think that's clear, though. I think a lot of folks still believe that brush drop-off is still limited to those dump days.
Okay, so we can highlight that people
We
can.
can tell people they can come at any time.
Right, so, and I'm not sure if that was on Facebook or the website,
I will update
but
that tomorrow.
put that on the website that you
Yeah.
can bring your brush for drop-off any hours that we're in business, right? So that's 7 to 3 or?
7 to 3.
7 to 3.
7 to 3.
One of the other things we talked about tonight was prohibiting private contractors from actually depositing their stuff in the street and communicating that on the website. So we hopefully head that off at the pass. Because otherwise you will have those guys just taking the stuff, cutting it, chopping up, and dumping it in the street.
Yeah, so if you've got a landscaper or a contractor, I mean, and you've hired them, they should be taking the stuff away as much as possible. I mean, if that's what their job is supposed to be.
Right. And we can communicate that on the website.
Bring stuff out. So it's going to be a process. It's what we've done in the past, and I think it's the right thing to do. There's going to be areas that we're not going to do, which is going to be like the private roadways for the most part. But we'll try to hit everything as much as we can.
Then the point is that he's going to come up against friction with the athletic field users. And they're going to not be happy that stuff's not in line and stuff's not ready, but I think everybody's just got to realize that we got to come together and we'll get it done for you, but it's going to take a week or two.
Well, also, can we get from Recreation a minimum list? In other words, is there, look, if opening day for Little League is 2 weeks before they're going to get lined, all right, maybe that's, but if there's folks that are just in the practice phase and the actual season hasn't started and they can wait, then they can wait.
Right.
So
I think
maybe we could at least get a feel for what the pain level is so that we can communicate that. And if there is something that, if something absolutely needs priority, at least we can weigh that as opposed to just a blanket, don't talk to us for 3 weeks and
No,
find
I
out
think
there's
that
an
makes
issue.
sense, yeah.
So,
It's a good suggestion.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I was going to
Nope.
move on to the other little nugget. So John got a communication in the mail today? Or,
Don't know when it was, last week, I believe.
and,
that mulch?
yeah.
Oh, I got one
Oh,
of
you
those.
got one too?
I got one of those.
It's a picture of a property in town with a mulch pile,
Yeah.
and it says, "I do not believe that township trucks or employees should be delivering mulch to private residents. I witnessed this while driving on Country Club Road last year, April 3rd of 2017. If it happens again, I will file a formal complaint at a town meeting."
Except, we have mulch we can't get rid of.
I don't necessarily have an issue with people putting in requests for mulch that, like you say, we have to get rid of anyway, but, to John's point, what's the directive from the five of us to John as to when someone asks for mulch, should he be permitted to go down and deliver the mulch?
Well, I think the rules had been that if you requested mulch, that mulch would be delivered as long as you took a whole dump load. You
And-
couldn't take a,
And provide
wheelbarrow
we
full.
can get to it.
And it's up to us, and we'll get rid of it until we're done, until we don't have any more, because we can't store it on site, we can't keep it, we can't keep inventory, we have to get rid of it. So it helps the township to get rid of it. Now, I think the problem lies with that is that the word isn't out on that. And when that's something that's not communicated loudly and openly, people think that you got a good deal because you know somebody and they're delivering you mulch.
Right.
And I'll bet that's what the individual sent that, thinks that, hey, somebody knows somebody and they're getting a good deal. And that's not the case. It's not good if people don't know that, because it certainly looks that way. So I think Jake and other means out there, if we want to continue that policy, we need to get the word out that we can do it on a space available basis.
So, just to address that,
Yeah,
you can't tell us when you want it to be delivered. It'll be delivered when the guys have time.
right,
If we have time, and if
Yeah.
we have the product, so.
Right.
yeah.
I just want to make sure that people understand that we generally have somewhat of a list. We have the normal people who've asked every year for stuff, and we've kind of cut back a little bit only because of time constraints, and we haven't been able to do that. I don't know why this resident felt the need to address this at this point in time, but I just want to put it out there that, we do this on a regular basis, and we will continue to do this on a regular basis for individuals, but I don't want it to be,
Well, it'll be Bedminster resident.
Right.
Now, do we limit it to people that, if I'm a Bedminster resident and I have a landscape business, in which case I send mulch out and I can make money off of that?
No.
Do we do that? No, we don't do that, okay? You only get a load, one load?
Not half a load.
Half a load. Now, also,
One load.
if I have a smaller property, I can't take a full load, but boy, I'd love to get free mulch. That'd be great. It's that time of season. Can they come down here and get mulch on their own?
They can.
They have a pickup truck or a wheelbarrow or whatever they want.
Anytime.
And
So that
anytime-
probably people ought to be reminded of that in a conspicuous manner too.
And if we have people available, we'll assist them with loading it with the machine if we have the capability.
Yeah.
And for those who remember Mount Bedminster,
Yes, Sandy.
in the year following Sandy,
Yeah.
right, that was back there. I came with my truck and dragged my children and my wife, and all with shovels, and we did a few runs. But once again, come back to the website. The website and Facebook page are great ways of getting that out there. Also, to the fact that if there's a resident, or whether it's someone who's just angry that they see this happening, if it's out there, right, if it's transparent, if it's promoted that this is a township opportunity, and to some extent with the brush and debris that came from these last two storms and maybe coming from this next storm, you need room to clear out to handle the new mulch that's going to be generated.
Correct.
So you have to get it out, right?
And unfortunately, the mulch pile that I need to get to, probably we won't be able to get to because everything's in the way of it at this point in time, so.
Right, so
But like so many things we do at the township, so much of it is about communication. Like I said, I read that, I got a copy of that, and in a vacuum, I can understand if he didn't know, he thinks that somebody knows somebody and they get a good deal, and it appears to be on the taxpayer dime. So I can understand that, but we've got to do the best that we can do. I mean, we can't knock on everybody's door and tell them, here's the policy, but we can certainly try to make that policy as conspicuous as possible and as fair as possible, and I think that's what...
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of these situations where it's a win-win.
Yeah.
We're winning, they're winning, but you're right. It should be out there and everybody should know that it's an
We'll
opportunity.
make sure we update.
Yeah.
Can we communicate to that individual if you know who it is?
Don't know who it is.
That's anonymous.
It's anonymous.
Yeah. I was hoping to call them back, but maybe they'll read Jake's paper if he runs it.
That
I'm
is my-
sure he reads Jake's paper.
That's the update for DPW, Mayor, and nothing on JVH from the past meeting, so that's it for me.
Thank you all.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
John?
Mayor, thank you. Good evening, everybody. A couple quick items. Master Plan Committee, the team is in the process of finalizing its findings and recommendations. We hope to share our initial report with the Land Use Board sometime in early April. Lamington River Restoration Project, Robert Lewis from Flint Hill Preserve and Joe Urbani from Urbani Fisheries met with the EC last Tuesday, and that was also attended by several of the township residents. It was a good presentation. We got a lot of good Q&A, which was exactly the intent of having these regular status updates. They're still awaiting approval from the NRCS for the grant for the upper 2-mile portion of the river. They expect to hear something back by the end of the month. If they are approved, they would have to seek DEP approval and obtain all necessary permits, which they estimate would take an additional 3 months. They can do the construction in a 45-day window between August and September 15th. So if they were to miss the window this year, the project would have to be pushed back to 2019. So that's where they stand right now. More updates to come. I also want to give a shout out to John. I had the opportunity to have a conversation with one of our residents over the weekend, and he was commenting on the fact that you drive up Allen Road and you're leaving Bedminster in a snowstorm because suddenly you go from a beautifully plowed street to literally drifts across the road. And then when we re-enter Bedminster higher up, you can once again see that the roads are cleanly plowed and everything's back to normal. So he wanted to extend his thanks to the DPW for all the good work they've been doing over the last several weeks in these crazy times.
I'll pass it along.
Thank you, John.
Everybody on my street knows when it turns into Bridgewater.
Yep. Exactly. That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Larry?
From the Environment Commission, we've got 2 events coming up, and the flyer's actually out in the back. April 18th, a program on butterflies. So that's going to be over at Miller Lane, right?
It'll be here.
Yeah.
Are we on, we're on Miller Lane?
Yeah. Yes. And that's actually going to be by Kathleen Palmer, Peter Palmer's wife, who is a butterfly
Aficionado.
aficionado. I was going to say expert, but aficionado is probably a more apt term for Kathleen.
Lepidopterist.
Really?
That was what I was going to say.
Leopard.
Lepidopterist.
So we had moths, we got butterflies, and April 20th, we're going to have bats. So we're in the bat presentation. That's going to be over at River Road. So if anyone is interested, and I know you all are, and you'll all be participating on those EC programs coming up.
And the school is being well informed on
The
this?
school is being well informed. On EC, we actually have a liaison to the school. Actually, we have 2 liaisons to the school who have been promoting this since it's been done in concert with the school. So we hope to get a lot of kids, a lot of parents, and actually we selected the days based upon availability and trying to coordinate with the school and the teachers. On land use, as Colin said, Master Plan Committee is preparing to come in April. I think Trina just sent out the notice when Master Plan, I think that's the, I forget which date, but she just...
5th, I think, maybe, yeah.
So there's not a lot of pending applications, but certainly moving on the master plan is important. Steve and I actually have a meeting tomorrow morning. I'm sorry, tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you.
Tomorrow afternoon with Walter Lane at Somerset County Planning to pursue an application for a planning grant so that we can actually get some Highlands grant money that can be drilled down into the master plan review so we can actually get some money to follow up on the good work that Colin and the Master Plan Committee have done, and so that when the planning board is ready, we've got a whole mess of professional work product to base the master plan on. Ag Advisory Commission, we'll talk about farmers market a little bit later, but there's 2 other issues going on with ag planning. We're going to have a meeting with Beth Davison from NJCF about some pending agricultural easements that may be coming through the Ag Commission. And then also separately a discussion with, once again, with Walter Lane and the county on the county-wide preservation plan as affecting agricultural properties, and they'll sort of drill that down to the Ag Commission and talk about some comments that we can implement here possibly, and those meetings are being scheduled for either late March or early April. That's all.
I just have two things to add. A banner week last week at the Bedminster School, as there were 2 nightly and 2 afternoon performances of the school play. I think this was probably the most ambitious project yet. The stage, they had tap dancing. It was anything goes with a lot of Cole Porter music and just some amazing talented kids that worked very hard and had missed a lot of rehearsals the past 2 weeks, but they pulled it off wonderfully. And also, this Friday is the annual faculty versus 8th grade basketball game. And
I'll be watching.
You're going to be rooting this year.
I'll be rooting this year.
I always
For
find
students, by the way.
I always find it amazing. I've got an 8th grader this year, but I always figured if I was going to one of those, who would you root for? I'd root for my buddies, the 8th graders. No. The overwhelming audience, the student support seems to be for the faculty, which I always find amazing. But I will tell you, the faculty team gets older every year. The 8th grade team never does.
That's right.
And so, hats off to the faculty and the 8th graders. It's a great, fun fundraiser for the 8th grade trip. Come out Friday night if you get the chance. And now for an administrator's report.
Mayor.
Oh, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry, how did I
That's
miss
all right,
it?
that's
I
all right,
thought-
Mayor.
I
We won't hold it
apologize.
against it. Actually, I haven't had any subcommittee meetings anyway, so it's perfect.
Okay.
I read my mind. It got canceled, our historic preservation was canceled on Thursday. So, to be continued.
Couple things. At our last meeting, we had quite a discussion regarding short-term rentals. I was doing a little bit of homework, at least on my part, to reach out. I did attend Somerset County Managers Association. We meet, try and meet monthly. I reached out to other Somerset County towns to see who has issues with Airbnbs or short-term rentals. A few of them have had issues similar to ours or worse, and most towns have an ordinance in place that allows for short-term rentals of 30 days or more. A couple of them shared those ordinances with me, and I think we got a couple other samples that have been circulated, so that was my intel on that topic. As I said, the new website, having a lot of fun with it. It's very user-friendly. I'm meeting tomorrow with 2 members of the police staff to kind of let them get their fingers into it, and it's just easy to use. We're still learning. If you see something that isn't quite up to snuff, let us know, but I'm very proud of it so far. Just to note, petitions for the primary election are due April 2nd at 4 p.m. They're starting to trickle in. If anyone has any questions, let me know. There is a new legislation that changes, it's not on my report, changes UCC fees. And the mayor asked me to reach out to our construction official to see how this will impact Bedminster and even Jacobs as well. This new legislation that came about March 5th primarily impacts roofing and siding, some sheds that are between 100 and 200 square feet. It impacts security alarms in 1 and 2 family dwellings, the removal and replacement of sheet rock on 1 and 2 family dwellings up to 25% of the entire building. It impacts most deck renovation or repairs as long as it does not support a roof or structure above it, or it is a complete replacement, then there is a permit required. It impacts the replacement of plumbing fixtures in a commercial structure and plug-in landscape irrigation systems. As far as how does that impact us revenue-wise, probably somewhere in the $15,000 to $20,000 range. If you were to subtract all that out in 2016 and 2017, about $20,000 a year, potentially.
Okay. Good data. Good to know. All right.
So I see it on the agenda for later about the Airbnb. Do you want to wait for that?
Yeah, let's talk about that then. All right, discussion on introduced ordinances. We don't have any, but we do have an introduction of one ordinance, and we do have a hearing on a public hearing on another ordinance. Introduction, ordinance 2018-003. This is an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appraisal limits and establish a cap bank, NJSA 40A:40-45.14. This ordinance provides that a municipality may, when authorized by ordinance, appropriate the difference between the amount of its actual final appropriation and the 3.5% percentage rate as an exception to its final appropriation in either the next two succeeding years. Public hearing for this ordinance is scheduled April 2nd, 2018, 7 p.m. in these chambers. Now, we go through this every year. That doesn't sound like what it is. Well, I guess it does if you really parse it down. We're going to talk about this in a subsequent meeting or later. We all know that we've had a pretty good budget year. This is not to exceed or get anywhere near close to our budget cap, because we're not this year. But since we had a good year, or in the fact that we had a good year, the difference between the cap and where you come in, you can put that in the bank so that if you have an extraordinary year, you can use that to go slightly over the 2% and not get penalized. The school has had to use that in recent years. I think we did use it one year in the past 9 that I recall.
It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, but it was something that sometimes you have to do it. Sometimes you have extraordinary circumstances. You only get 2 years on it, but if you don't pass the ordinance that basically establishes this bank, establishes that you have that delta, then you don't get to use it. So we will talk about that again at the April 2nd meeting, should we introduce. Any other comments or questions?
So is that sort of like a phantom percentage that just sat there if you need for the following year?
So it goes into, actually what the mayor said, it goes into what's called a cap bank. It sits there for 2 years, and if you had extraordinary circumstances in the next 2 years, and you needed to get some extra funding, you have a permission to go above the 2%.
You have, and that's all, you have a permission to go above the 2%. There is no money there.
Right. That's
So when we say it's a cap bank, it's not like there's money in an account somewhere that we're then going to go grab. It just allows us to exceed the limit that the state imposed on us for the amount that we raise on our budget.
Right. You
So-
get credit for doing a good job.
You get credit for doing a good job when you have a year of extraordinary circumstances. The money is still coming from the taxpayers when you go that, when and if you do that. So this isn't free money that we're putting away. It just allows us to skirt around the cap if we've,
Given that
Done well.
it's got 2 years on it, are you able to aggregate for those 2 years? In other words, if I've got year 1, let's use numbers and say it was, we could bank 1% every year.
Right.
Okay? So that at the end of the 2 years, you've got 2 percentage points in the bank, no? Do you follow?
I can't remember how
So if you
that-
bank, if you bank a percentage this year, it's good for the next 2 years, right? But then what if you were able to
Can
bank
you
something
add it
next year, can you
together?
aggregate the
No.
bank?
No, I don't think you can do that. You've never had to do it but once.
But let's
You have to come back and
let's say you have 2% this year, and because we didn't need it. Next year, we go all the way to 2%. We did exceed our cap, but because in 18 we have this extra, not in 19, but in 20 we can claw back 2 years
Right, so you
and
could-
get that.
You could go to
That's
4% if you needed it.
right.
But what I'm saying is
Right.
that can you take, if you had 2 years of banking cap, can you
Get
aggregate
4%.
Right, can you?
I don't know.
I believe it is added together that you have a 2-year total.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to double check.
Yeah,
I'll
let's see.
report back.
And we'll get that answer before the public hearing. It's a good
I
question.
don't think it changes the merit on this particular one.
Because I think it actually may be, if I remember what happened in 11. Was it 11, I think?
It was 2011.
I think you might be right. I think you might be able to get that. Anyway, let's find out. for the hearing.
Thank you, Judy.
Any other questions?
Do we need any action on that?
We need to, I need to ask for a motion to introduce 2018-003.
So moved.
Second.
Just an all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All any opposed? Thank you.
All right. Public hearing on ordinances. We have one ordinance for public hearing tonight, 2018-02. This ordinance amends the general ordinances, Chapter 10, entitled Fire Prevention. This ordinance amends sections 10.1.2 through 10.1-8 of Chapter 10. Can I get a motion to open the public hearing on 2018-02?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Is there any member of the public that wishes to come up and ask or be heard on ordinance 2018-02? I'll also open it up to any member of the dais that wishes to discuss or have question on this. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing on ordinance 2018-02?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Can I get a motion to pass ordinance 2018-02 in favor?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Mayor Parker?
Aye.
Thank you.
And thank Mr. Anderson for his hard work on this.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
We have 3 resolutions on the consent agenda. Are there any comments or questions? If not, I'll take a motion for the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
This would be a roll call vote. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Mayor Parker?
Aye.
Thank you.
We have 2 resolutions, we have an introduction and resolution. Let's start out with 2018-033, the self-examination of the budget. Judy, do you want to talk to us a little bit about what that means?
Every 3 years, the municipality, every year after the budget, the rest of this week, Debbie Stern and myself, we put together all the budget documentation and we send it down to the state for review. But to be honest, the state fully reviews only a third of the towns each year. Full, page by page, every number check. The other 2/3 do a resolution to say that they have fully checked everything in their budget and everything seems to be accurate and that their auditor has done the same. And we have to send that down by resolution that we've done our best to make it accurate. Now, that doesn't mean that later, maybe in August or September, we get an email that gives us a question about a particular line in our budget, and we get that. But for the budget process, only 1/3. This is not our year, so we are doing a resolution to say we're checking our budget as best we can and certifying it's correct. We are up for review, full review next year. So, that's the process.
Can I get a motion for resolution 2018-033?
So moved.
Second.
Again, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
An introduction of the 2018 municipal budget, which will be resolution 2018-034. So are we going to chat about it a little bit tonight, or are we
We
going
chat
to?
about it a little bit. I was on the phone today with the auditors. Normally, we introduce tonight, we give a little oversight, but I have a little budget presentation that I do usually at the meeting in between introduction and adoption, which will be the April 2nd meeting. The auditor will be here at that meeting to answer any questions that might come up. I did attach a little, a copy of the legal notice that actually goes in the newspaper of the budget for the public to see what last year was in comparison to this year. And as we said, our amount to be raised by taxes this year, the increase is 0, which I think is something to be very proud of. So, everybody here went through the budget line by line. We did it together along with the department heads. I don't know if anyone has any questions or any concerns, but we have to answer them all the way to the next meeting. We can do that.
That's fine.
So I will just comment, and I'll comment next meeting as well. This is my 9th budget cycle, We've had some rough years like 2011 where we had to use bank. One of the things that happened coming off of the recession of 2008 and the aftermath, because we didn't get well immediately, was usage of our surplus. Surplus sounds like it is what it isn't. It's a fund balance that you use to apply for the beginning of the following year when you haven't collected much in the way of taxes, so you have to have that money going forward. So you have to have a surplus every year. You have to carry some money forward every year. We've had some years where we've cut into that surplus, partially because of the 2% cap, and some of the wise old elected officials, at least that I've run into, that have been in this chair before me and long before me, have said, watch what you do with that fund balance. Don't get yourself too low on fund balance. It's really like taking money out of your rainy day fund if you have that in your family. So we had a couple of years where that fund balance got a little tight, and our auditor told us, you're cutting in a little bit too close to that fund balance. And so we have made it one of our goals year to year to year was to get ourselves healthy again on fund balance. Well, we all saw what happened this year, and that our fund balance really did well. And those numbers we'll talk about that at the April 2nd meeting, but we did really well on the fund balance. So that meant it was time to make sure that the people got some of that. And the auditors will tell you that to be healthy, to get the best credit rating, you should be collecting as much taxes as you can every year so you can be healthy like a business. Well, we're not a business. We're an entity that collects money from people and provides a service. And whereas if you do not raise your revenue year to year to year, that 2% or that inflation will eventually get you if you just simply freeze from year to year to year. But when you really have a banner year, we sought some money aside for things that were important or that could happen, some contingencies that we're being made aware of. But we also made sure that this year we are not going to take any more from the taxpayers that we took away last year. I have it on a pretty good authority that the county is going to give us some pretty good news on their portion of the property taxes as well. And I know the school has the bond on the school ends this year, so we may get some good news out of the school, even though their operating budgets is very tight. So 2018 may actually be a very good property tax year for most of the folks in Bedminster, all three components. So that didn't happen by accident. The folks on the staff here are about as good as pinching pennies as anybody knows, and they treat their money or your money like it's their money. I think Colin has said that several times. So it didn't come without a lot of hard work. So I thank everybody for what they did. We'll get a lot more talking about that on the 2nd of April, but we'll be able to fill in all the numbers and see how it goes then. So do we have to actually introduce a resolution here?
Yes, so there is a resolution in your book. You have to actually read it out loud as the mayor, or someone needs to read it out loud, and we actually vote to introduce.
Let me make sure I get the right page. Is that this thing with a small print?
Here, I'll give it to you in big.
Yeah, give it to me in big print and hold it out there. All right. The municipal budget of the Township of Bedminster, County of Somerset for fiscal year 2018. Be it resolved that the following statements of revenues and appropriations shall constitute the municipal budget for the current year. Be it further resolved that said budget is published in the issue of the April 5th, 2018, Bernardsville News. The governing body of the Township of Bedminster does hereby approve the following budget for the current year. Notice is hereby given that the budget and tax resolution approved by the governing body of the Township of Bedminster, County of Somerset on March 19th, 2018. A hearing on the budget and tax resolution will be held at the Township Municipal Building on April 16th, 2018, 7 o'clock p.m. at which time and place objections to said budget and tax resolutions for the year 2018, current year, may be presented by taxpayers and other interested persons. And with that, I would encourage folks to come out if they have interest in such, and I hope they do. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote, Mr. Stevenson.
Aye.
Mr. Hickey.
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs.
Aye.
Ms. Santucci.
Aye.
Mayor Parker.
Aye.
Thank you.
Bill list. Can I get a motion to approve the bill list pending the approval of individual invoices?
So moved.
Second?
Again, roll call vote, Mr. Stevenson.
Aye.
Mr. Hickey.
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs.
Aye.
Ms. Santucci.
Aye.
Mayor Parker.
Aye.
Thank you.
Discussion items. We have new business, old business, or is anybody that has a discussion item that's not listed? So we will go to new business. Winter Storm Riley and Storm Quinn updates. Is there anything that we didn't talk about with Mr. Walton that we want to bring up? Because we hit that pretty well, but in case. Old business, 130 Hillside Avenue. Do we have anything new?
I have now spoken with all interested parties. We do have two contiguous property owners who still have interest in purchasing a portion of the property. The assessor is currently providing fair market value, which is what Mr. Velardo said we need to have. That was delayed a bit due to some other things going on, but we should have that soon. I'll distribute that to the interested parties and go from there.
Mr. Jacobs, Farmers Market.
Farmers Market, we had a meeting last week, the Farmers Market Committee with the folks from the EC and from the Ag Advisory Commission. As I think I mentioned last time, that John Velardo had provided us with a version of the registration materials that was largely cribbed from, I believe it was Chester's Farmers Market materials. Since then, Taylor James, who's runs Flipside Farms in town, gave us a copy of something that had been generated in Franklin Township and was prepared by Tara Kenyon, who was formerly the Ag Advisor to the Somerset County Planning Department, which is now working for Franklin. I looked at what she had prepared, and I sort of liked her format a little bit better. So I, with apologies to John, and no offense was taken, because John just scripted from Chester's anyway, I'm rejiggering, I'm taking it upon myself to rejigger the registration materials to follow that. We'll present them at the next farmers market meeting, and the registration materials, the invites, they're going out in about a week and a half or so. We have a list of about 30 plus vendors who are going to receive the materials first. As the materials explain, priority giving to Bedminster farmers and other Bedminster producers of locally produced agricultural materials. So it doesn't always have to be produce, it could be yarn that is raised from animals on site or something else. And then with circles going out of prioritization to Somerset County, Hunterdon, and trying to keep the farmers market local within a, I believe the radius is about 50-mile radius, trying to really focus in on Jersey product and stuff that's local here. Locations already been identified at River Road Park, and by the time we meet again, hopefully everything is finalized and going out. And so thanks again to John for preparing all those materials, and I'll be sending it, when I go through my cut, I'll send it to you and to Judy. You guys can make sure that we hit the right information for the insurance, and then that's it.
All right. Any questions?
Larry, you've already got some excitement. I see on Facebook, people are already talking about it.
All right.
Yes.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's great.
That's good to know.
Absolutely.
Short-term rentals, we kind of talked about it a little bit. We touched upon it. Doug, you want to elaborate?
Sure. John had sent over some form ordinances from some other municipalities They're largely similar. Some of the typos get carried over from one to the next, so you know that they're similar. But it's not, I don't think it's an issue that's hard to grasp what the issue is. I think it's incumbent upon us to decide, do we want to start putting something like this in motion? And what it really seems to come down to is that the statutes permit municipalities to regulate rentals of less than 175 days, and that these towns have found that the daily type rental, the short-term rental, has created a host of problems within the municipality. It's all enumerated in the statute: overcrowding, and nuisance, and trash, and just, you know, all sorts of issues that you can imagine that would come up. And they're prohibiting rentals of less than 30 days, and then within the ordinance, you can describe what's a dwelling unit, so you can sort of customize what you want to do here. But I don't have a sense, one way or the other, from the group, from the committee, as to what do we want to do, if anything. Is this something that we want to look into, and is this something we want to step into the fray over?
Well, I know it was shared with you that, and I won't mention the name, but there was one of the parties that was discussed at our last meeting sent me a letter, which I shared with the rest of you, and that was their part of the story. One thing I get out of this is that there is more than one part of the story on this. I know that there's some zoning issues going out about it. It might benefit us to see how that plays out. As I told the folks at the last meeting, I'm not a big fan of legislating a one-off event. I'm not a big fan of legislating a dispute between neighbors that can't be solved first among neighbors. But if we determine that it is a trend item, it is something that's not just isolated to one property on one street with one set of neighbors, and there's a bigger global problem within the town, then I think that's something that we should consider taking action on. So I guess my first question would be, we know about one problem, but are we hearing about any other issues in other parts of the town? And I suspect there might be, but I just haven't heard it myself.
I haven't heard it either, other than this circumstance, but that doesn't mean there isn't.
Right.
Now that we've opened up the topic, maybe people will come forward and...
Well, yeah.
You know,
I'm not suggesting we close it,
Right.
but...
You know, we've heard incidents in the hills where folks are, some folks may be picking up empty units and acquiring them, and then if they can't rent them out immediately, they're advertising them on Airbnb and similar websites. And my understanding is, and this is from talking to folks at Hills Village Master Association, it really is, it violates their condo rules, but they're not sure how to tackle the problem, or I don't want to say tackle the problem, right? Tackle that violation. So it's certainly something that is, it's a burgeoning issue. It's not going to go away. And I think it requires, Mayor, as you said, not just hitting a one-off neighbor complaint, but really finding out what the issues are and whether there's a real problem that is distinct to the Airbnb situation, at least the way we see it here in town.
Well, that brings up to me a pretty good question or opportunity. If the homeowners association and/or the master association has deemed that it's a problem within a certain zone that we have, then theoretically, if they have rules against it, they may have a proposal that maybe we would be turning into an ordinance, at least for that zone. I mean, that's something concrete. You could say that the planned unit development zone would like to have, and then see what their rules are, and would that be something that might be fodder for an ordinance? To me, that might be a place to start. That doesn't cover the place that was talked about at the last,
Right.
but at least it gives us, in other words, we have a governing body that has deliberated, the associations, and said, here's the rules that we'd like to set up, based on what they've seen, maybe that's a pretty good start, in addition to some of the stuff, Doug, that you've been able to uncover to start, a thoughtful process.
Yeah, and I see both sides of the argument, I really do. On the one hand, you have folks who buy properties for rental purposes. And then on the other hand, you got folks that are living there and they don't necessarily want a revolving door next door. I get it. So it's really, do we have a position that, we think that the Township of Bedminster should be on one side of the fence or the other? I think that's what we need to figure out. And I think part of that goes down to, is this truly a problem, or is this a one-off thing by the folks over here who are upset about it? Yeah. I know one other place in town that has an Airbnb, and I know that the neighbors that are directly next door don't like it. But again, that's...
And it also doesn't have to be a one-size-fits-all, because it's a zoning issue. Different zones can have slightly different rules if that's something that we think may be appropriate.
Clearly, this issue has some mass as well, because I went on today to the Airbnb site, type in 07921, and 79 properties pop up. Now, I'm not saying that's all Bedminster, because it picks up the surrounding area, but it's more than one or two properties that are doing this right now.
Yeah.
And there's no likelihood that that's going to decrease in the near term. So it's real and it's here.
It's about identifying, is there a problem, right? The first thing. And yes, what was presented to us at the last meeting, a neighbor dispute, we heard both sides. We heard there's a problem, there's traffic. We heard it's not a problem, there is no traffic. Folks in the hills, as I said, the Master Village Association has a rule, but is it a rule that's dealing with the problem, or is it a rule waiting for the problem, right? So I think we do have to figure out what are we trying to regulate here? And we have to recognize that there's a lot of folks who may have a condo and may go to Florida for an extended period, or their house, and they may say, I can get some extra income by taking weed here or there. We've had golf events in town, and I'm sure that as those golf events come in and tournaments come in, folks say, hey, I can rent out my condo or house. I'll go away for a couple weeks, let some folks who are interested in that take it over. Right? We got to figure out if we're going to jump into that. We should really know more about what those issues are.
Exactly. And another issue, just as you were going through types of events, I was sort of racking my brain too of who would want to come out here. What about equestrian events? That we want to start getting the USET site back up and running, and we want to promote events there. But then you can't stay in town because you can't have a rental for less than 30 days, and that's what these ordinances seem to want to drill down on. My caution would be, let's think about what we're doing before we shoot ourselves in the foot, and then we undermine another, thing that we're trying to do and trying to get out there and trying to revitalize that part of our township. So there are good arguments on both sides. I just think that before we start putting pen to paper and putting together an ordinance, we really understand the ripple effect of what that's going to cause, and are we trying to fix a problem that may not exist.
Where are the ordinances from that you've been?
Fort Lee, Paramus, and Hohokus, and I think there's a fourth.
I got one from Montgomery.
Right, and I got the ones from the league, which were, I think, at least there were 3 or 4 of them when I got them from the league attorney. And they were all the same. As Doug said, they were exactly the same. And they were flat prohibitions.
Right.
Which, new issue, perhaps the knee-jerk reaction is prohibit. Living with Airbnb, even, it sounds like it's been around for years, but it really hasn't. As Colin and Doug both said, maybe this is not or the mayor said, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Who knows where we end up with it, but I think we need to take a hard look. And
I think it probably is something that we should go back to zoning over. How much of the zoning violations are being, brought within this Airbnb, and how many violations are out there? Is this something that's truly driving the needle one way or the other? Or is it just that you have a one-off situation where someone's not happy about how a particular property is being used?
It's also interesting to see if the complaints, so for example, if we focus in on the condos, are the complaints coming into the township, or are they going to the master associations or the homeowners association? So are they trickling their way down here, or are they staying at the condo level? And so I think there's a lot of information that we need to discern first, and maybe there's a process for that.
And also, we mentioned this at the last land use board, because as the proposal for the master plan revision comes forth, this could certainly be on a list of things for discussion on that. I mean, this might be something that gets included in the new master plan revision, either a support or a prohibition or some kind of, modified. So I think it wouldn't hurt to get a little bit of feedback from the land use board, because it's a land use issue and that's what they look at.
Sure.
So.
Agreed.
All right, well, I don't think this is going to get solved soon, but it's certainly something we got to keep on our radar and keep developing more information about.
Agreed.
Thank you, Doug. Thanks for your work. We do this twice at every meeting. We did it at the beginning of the meeting, but we open up that microphone again for public comment. If there's a member of the public that wishes to be heard, state your name, your address, and speak into the microphone, because there will also be an audio portion of the video recording.
Hi, Denise King. You can hear me, I'm sure. Number one, I want to thank the group here, because it sounds like you did a really nice job in regards to during the storm. So being a nurse, and I work over right at Matheny, so I know how it is to try to be alert and have to be ready and well, I was at my job. But, so thank you very much. I think it sounds like you try to keep people posted, because it is difficult, very difficult. And you're right, you can certainly see the difference. I guess my only comment on that is certainly having to be out there. 206, I guess, do we have any, I don't know, this is a question, do we have any say about 206, since it's a state highway?
Say in what regard?
In how it's cleaned or cleared during the storm?
You mean like a plowing standpoint? John, you could talk about that best, but our roads are not the county roads, not the state roads.
It's a state road, and it's already up to the DOT. Comments should be directed to the DOT for that.
And pathetically, because there's a DOT yard, pluck them in, hopefully they would take care of that early, but
Some
yeah,
have assumed
unfortunately.
based on her comment that
Yeah.
DO 206 was not cleared
Yeah.
in a timely manner.
It was a tough storm. I mean, there's no two ways about it, the middle one. It was a very tough storm. So, but anyway, thank you. And again, this may be late, but I want to thank Doug, and I think the whole Recreation Committee on the dog park, because I have to say, it's really very nice. For those of us who are a dog owner, it's really been, and it's well kept. And I want to thank you, too, because I'm out there all the time, both Burnt Mills and River Road. I kind of, depends on what time of day, and they're very well kept.
Thank you.
I mean, they really are. So, again, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Township Committee comments. We'll start with Mr. Stevenson.
I've said a lot tonight on different issues, storm, so I'm not going to repeat myself. But again, pleasure working with you all on the budget. Look forward to getting that introduced, and it's something I think we all should be very proud of.
Mr. Hickey.
Mayor, thank you. No comments except pleasure work on the budget, and it was great as a first-time experience to go through it. Thank you.
Not many people thank you for working on the budget,
It's good.
but I like you to cut of your jib there.
Get into the nitty-gritty. I like it.
Mr. Jacobs.
Two comments. This weekend, just, I guess it was Saturday morning, just walking by, relatively early. Dog park had like 10 cars out there, pack of big dogs running around. It was great to see. It's early morning, so, and just driving by during the day, it's getting constant use, which is great. So,
It's great.
Doug, once again, great job for for spearheading that. Second comment is, it's the end of the meeting, and I don't believe Mr. Bellardo has said one word. And I don't recall that ever before.
On to Ms.
So I'm
Santucci.
just,
He's saving it. I'm very happy that our budget is done. We had a free Monday for once, last Monday. I almost came to town hall to work on the budget. So I'm very excited that it's almost there. Very proud of it. I know some of our neighbors have finished theirs and saw some of the articles, but very excited. You did a great job, Colin, for your first time. You're very engaged. and-
Maybe you're the reason for this.
Questions. Yeah, you asked a lot of good questions that sometimes we might not have thought of in the past, so. Thank you very much.
All right. I have nothing further to add. Can I get a motion to go into executive session?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll see you in the back room. We're on video still?
Yes, sir.
All right, it's 9:01 and the committee is out of executive session. If there's no other business, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Good night.
How much
What do you,
What do you guys want to do?
what do you,
50?
Or do you need more? I mean,
No, it's a group. What do we want to do?
what did we do last year, 50?
50 or 80?
goodbye, my friends.